Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Powerful Man Show. I am your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host, Franco Burrows. Franco, how you doing, brother?
Doing great. Thanks, Doug. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. I'm excited. Anytime I get to talk to Swansea's prodigal son, the man, the myth, the legend. For those guys that do not know, Franco is a graduate of the activation method, a graduate of the Alpha Reset, a graduate of the Brotherhood, and has gone on to become one of our advisors, which an advisor is a person that you get on the call with. If you're interested in one of our programs, they're all alumni like Franco. Franco was a business owner and just a man with so many talents, but love having you back in here to share your wisdom, sir.
Thank you, Doug. Great to be here. We've had like 4 seasons of weather today. It's been snow, sun, sleet, rain. We've had the whole lot in Swansea today.
There you go. Well, there you go. That's why you always say it's the center of the world.
Yeah, center of the known universe.
I love it. Love it. Well, Franco, what we're going to talk about today is you brought something to the table. Is do the 5 love languages actually work? And I think that's an interesting question you brought up. A lot of people talk about the 5 love languages, but do they actually work? First, let's break them down. Can you break it down, the 5 love languages for the guys?
Oh, you put me on the spot now. So it's words of affirmation. And I think of that as you need to hear it. No?
Yep.
What's the other ones?
Acts of service.
Yeah. Acts of service. Touch.
Yep.
It's got to be one.
Touch.
Quality time.
Yep.
Quality time and gifts, is it?
Yep. Good job. You got it, man. On the spot. I knew I could put you on the spot because you'd get it every time. So yeah, the 5 love languages are in no particular order: quality time, acts of service, words of affirmation, physical touch, and gifts. And the premise behind this, just to give the guys a little bit of background, there's a book called The 5 Love Languages. And the premise behind this whole book is that each of us have a primary way that we receive love and a way that we give love. So an example would be my way of giving love is acts of service. My wife's way of doing it is quality time. And the premise behind the book, and there's more nuances to this, obviously, or it wouldn't be just a book. But the premise of it is if I'm trying to do things for my wife, like I decide I want to show her how much I love her, I'm going to take out the trash. I'm going to build, which I did. I'm going to build a new deck in the backyard so she can be out there and hanging out with the family, or I'm going to, do something along those lines. That misses. It doesn't trigger for her as love. However, if I just sit on the couch next to her, she starts to fill up with love, and vice versa. And if we don't realize these love languages, the premise, we might miss it, right? So my wife might sit next to me on the couch and I'm kind of like, well, let's go do something. Like, what are we doing? Just wasting time here. And she's really giving me love. It hurts her way of showing me love versus mine. So you can really miss each other.
Yeah. The idea is we could be speaking different languages and missing each other. Yeah. Both trying to give, but nobody receiving.
So, yeah. And we'll dive more into this for the guys. And the question on the table is, does this actually work? What's your experience with it, Franco?
Yeah, well, that's why I put the question to you, because as you know, as you just said, that I speak to a lot of the men as they're coming into our programs. And just like most of them have tried counseling, I would say more than half have tried counseling, couples counseling, therapy, whatever you want to call it. I would say at least half, somewhere around half, have tried love languages. A lot of the guys mention it when they get on the call, because we always ask them, well, one of the questions is, what have you tried so far, to fix your marriage? And it always strikes me that, well, if so many of these men have tried it, and they're coming to us because they still haven't been able to fix their marriage, does it work? And, of course, a lot of these things, like you say, come down to nuances. We spoke about that on the last podcast. I put it out on the group in our Facebook community. I put out a question a couple of weeks back, and we got some interesting responses. There were some men who said, yes, it's definitely helped. Some had some great connections with their wives because they'd discovered their love languages. We had one guy his wife broke down in tears. She said, "I can't believe you're thinking this deeply about how I receive love," and he was like, "Wow, I can't believe it." And that was just, there was just a couple like that. Okay. There was, interestingly, there was one of the men, who's just finished the activation method. He said he's applied it with his children. And he said that that had a really good effect, brought them a lot closer, to him. And then I would say there was probably more men saying, just over half, who were saying no, didn't have any good effect at all. So I thought it'd be good to have a look at why those reasons might be. I've got a few ideas. I think the first thing is that the way I see love languages is, what we're talking about is medium, or what's the word? Modes of processing our experience, isn't it?
Yep.
So that's, we can process things visually, we can process sound, feelings, and so on. So yeah, I see it as more of a way of enhancing the relationship. If it's a way of amplifying the relationship, potentially, but I think what it doesn't do is give that foundation, or help put the foundations in place for what you need for a great relationship. So when these guys are coming to us and say, "Well, I tried all the love languages, didn't work." Well, as we've spoken about in the past, the foundations are respect, connection, admiration, and so on. All of these things, sexual market value. You've done a great podcast on that, and we've done a lot of work in the group on sexual market value. So without these, in my opinion, more important things in place, I think it's more of an add-on. What do you think?
I think it's actually, so I think it is a tool. It's a tool in the toolbox that you have to use. So if you and I were to go out to build a house and I brought a drill, you'd be like, "Great. Okay, it's a tool, but we need to build the foundation first, Doug." Right? And the foundation is, it starts off, we talk a lot about the scales, right? When you first start dating, you have scales which are good on different sides. So on the left side, if you can imagine one of those balanced scales of justice or what have you, on one side you have good feelings or good emotions. On the other side, you have negative feelings and emotions and experiences. Right? When we first start dating, right, the good side far outweighs the negative, right? Because it's all fresh, it's new. You could fart and no one cares, right? And then over time, these negative expressions and feelings and disconnects start to happen, and those scales shift in a marriage. And for a lot of men, what happens is the negative experience and emotions are outweighing the good ones. So if you just come in with, "Okay, I'm going to try to get things back," because it's already pretty late, right? So the negative experiences, emotions that you guys had together is far outweighing the good ones. This is why therapy doesn't work for most guys, because they're focusing on the negative stuff and you're just fully entrancing that negative. Well, if you just come in with the love languages, it's kind of like that guy's wife said. She didn't say, "Wow, these love languages are working," or "I really feel your love." She said to him, "I love that you're thinking deeply about the way that I love." Right? So you're missing each other. In order for the love languages to work, it's a subtlety, right? It's a subtle thing. So another example would be my wife and I, right? If we're in the scales are tipped and we have too many negative experiences and feelings towards each other, like we did early on in our marriage, then if I just go sit with her to spend time with her, she's got no interest in that. That's not speaking love. That's annoying her, right, at that point, right? So the love languages are great as a knowing and a way as a tool to have, just like going to build a house, you want to have a drill, but you got to know when to use it. You got to have that solid foundation. So what we recommend guys do is you start with the triadic connection, right? The triadic connection helps you rebalance the scales, right? We have the clean slate method, which gets you to neutral, right? With the scales, gets you out of the negative and gets you to neutral so you can start adding things on. And then we add on there the triadic connection, which, as you know, Franco, very well, starts adding on those good vibes and good experiences, and the Live Like a King system solidifies that. So now that you have the triad in place, that's when you use love languages, right? Not before, right? It would be like hey, Franco, let's lay some concrete, get your drill. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. It's interesting. There was another group that came out of that question I did in the group, and that was the men who had noticed that their wives did appreciate, they were definitely getting a better connection with their wives when they were trying to work out their love languages. But quite a few of them said, but she's not interested in working out mine. And she's not connecting back with me the same way.
Yep.
She's not making the same effort back. And to me, that tells me that, like we say, desire is not something that you can have a transaction on. It's not like, I'll do this for you and you do that for me. You can't negotiate desire, as I forget who said it. So,
yeah,
I mean, that tells me that it's not the love languages that is going to get her desire to want to connect and please. She's going to enjoy you making an effort to connect with her.
Yep.
Get the attention on her. But we talk about the 3 levels, don't we? So level 1 is where you're both just trying to get what you can from the relationship. Level 2, you're both, the difference between 1 and 2 is you're both transacting. I'll do this for you if you do this for me.
Yep.
Level 1 is I'll just get whatever I can. You just get whatever you can. And level 3 is unconditional. So we're both going to do whatever we can to make each other happy, because that's what we want. We want each other to be happy.
Yep.
I think, it's about how you can get up to level 3. And, I think that, in my opinion, the love languages will only enhance a level 3 relationship. That's what I think.
And I agree with you, right? Again, it's another tool in the tool belt, which I recommend guys have. And we'll talk a little bit about how you can determine what your wife's is in a second here, and yours if you want to know. But I think most guys probably have a good idea. But we'll go over that in a second. But to your point, when you're in a level, most guys find themselves in a level 1 relationship, which is the lowest level, right? I'm going to get what I can out of this, right? Maybe, if you're in that level, we have a whole worksheet that we go through with the guys. But if you find yourself in a level 1, you're in dire straits, right? You're in bankruptcy, so to speak, in the marriage bank account. You've over withdrawn. It is time to take some drastic actions, get on a call with Franco immediately, or get out, right? If you're a level 2, you're close, right? Level 2 is an easy, slippery slope to get back down to level 1. And it's kind of the idea like, hey, I'll take out the trash if you make dinner, or look, I'll do this if you give me a blowjob, or whatever else it may be that comes in there. And then when she doesn't do it, you're resentful, right? Because she didn't hold up her end of the bargain, even though it probably wasn't talked about. And then level 3 is what we all want, right? We all want that connected, passionate, that woman, that queen that's by our side, as we go through and conquer the world. All guys want that. And that's when, as you said, the love languages come in, right? That's when, for me, anyway, what I found is that when we're on a level 3 relationship, then I want to sit on the couch with my wife and spend time with her, and she wants to, and it fills her up. Just even this morning, Franco, my wife was making breakfast for the kids, and I could just tell something was off. And I walked up to her and said, "Do you need a hug?" And she just melted into me. She's like, "That's exactly what I needed," and we went on, right? Because that's the focus. I recognized what was going on. We're in a level 3 marriage, and I know what her love language is. So it's easy for me to pull it off. And within seconds, I can make that shift. And that's a seduction shift, which we can get into later with the group that we're working on with those guys. But that's a huge shift in a relationship that's going to carry on. My wife's going to go throughout her day feeling loved and filled up. And all that took me was probably 15, 20 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I say this a lot to the men that I talk to, is that in the beginning of a relationship, we are hitting the spot usually for the other person. That's why we wouldn't be going through the honeymoon period and all that. But we're not consciously thinking about love languages. We're not thinking about, I need to work out how she received, or vice versa. She's not thinking about it. But what tends to happen is both the man and the woman are doing, in my opinion, doing everything. It's like you're not thinking, shall I say it? Shall I show it through touch? Shall I show it through words? You're just showing it in every way.
Yep.
And that's what I think with there was a big thing in education, I don't know, 15 years ago, something like that, about kids need to learn, they're a visual learner, so you need to present it to them visually, or they're an auditory learner, they're doing, and so on. And that's all good. But what I learned about learning styles is that there's all overlap. So you can learn in one medium, but that can overlap into another medium if you have a positive experience with it, So we're very versatile human beings.
I agree with you 100%. And, I also think love languages can somewhat shift, right? Your primary probably stays your primary, but you have secondary, tertiary love languages. For example, gifts isn't my primary love language, but gosh, I love it. I love getting a gift, right? Who doesn't? But where I think a lot of guys mess up here, guys that are in level 2 and level 1 marriages, and they find themselves in the situation and they're moderately or highly successful in business. So they have some walking around money in their pockets. They go out and they buy their wife a gift, right? To make things up.
Yes.
And if that's not her love languages, in my experience, it's very rarely the primary love language of a woman.
The guy who said his wife's love language was gifts, and it just felt like she was sort of milking it, She was like, "Oh, well, mine is gifts, you need to buy me more gifts," and it was less like, "Where's this ever going to end?"
Yeah.
But the interesting thing was going back to the guy whose kids, he said his kids felt a lot more connected to him.
Yeah.
And I felt that was an indicator maybe that, they say kids move on quickly, they forgive quickly. So, and they take everything at face value. So if you speak through the right medium with a kid, whether it's through touch or words or quality time or whatever, then that's it, bang, they're there with you. So I would reverse that back and think, well, why wouldn't an adult do the same thing? Is it because there's underlying resentment? Is it because there's a lack of trust? Is it because there's a lack of respect in the relationship? So it's kind of like, what would be the barrier to that? Because it should, I would say it should work if once you establish what someone's love language is. It should work.
Yeah, I think we go back to the scales analogy, right? And what happens in so many relationships over time is the scales get tipped. The scales get tipped to the negative. And then what do? We do what society tells us to do. We go to marital counselors, right? I went to 2 different counselors in my marriage. And my wife and I always left feeling worse. Always, right? Always felt shittier. And all we were doing was looking at the negative stuff, right? We're looking at the negative, and they gave us some exercises, which were good. But you walk out of there and you're talking about things that happened in the past, right? And that's where and you and I talk to hundreds of men, right? Every month. And when you talk to them, it's the same story over and over again. And it happens for the women too, by the way. The women don't necessarily like it. They just don't have another alternative and they're, to go to. They don't know that something else does exist. And so as long as you still are looking in the rear of your mirrors or trying to go forward, love languages aren't going to be there. Yeah, the woman's going to say gifts, right? Because she's going to milk it and try to get things out. Not all women, but if gifts is truly her love language, you could go outside, pick a flower and bring it back to her and she would melt, right? Mm-hmm. My guess is, and we both know a couple of these guys that have come through the program where their wife just turned them into a sugar daddy basically and just try to milk them for all the money that they possibly could get out of it. Right. So it wasn't really gifts. It's really expensive gifts that they are claiming was their love languages, and trips and spa days and out with the girlfriends, quote unquote, and things of that nature. So that's not truly a love language. So the question becomes then, we said we'd go back to, is how do you determine your wife's love language? Right. And there's apps you can do it, but an easy way to do it, as you know, Franco, is figuring out the way that your wife receives love is most likely the way that she gives love. So I'll say it again. The way that your wife receives what her love language is also the way she puts it out. So for me, as an example, I'll just use myself. When I naturally want to show somebody that I care about them, I do stuff for them, right? I build stuff. I, help them with their computer or whatever it is. I try to help them fix something because acts of service is mine. When someone does that for me, I feel great. This person really cares about me. It's very much the same. It's rarely something different. So physical touch, right? It's another thing. Most guys naturally think, physical touch is mine, sex. Well, that's just because you're not getting laid right now, right? For most guys, it actually isn't, because you're not going up. Unless you're that guy that's a hugger. You hug everybody you see, maybe. But if you're not that guy, chances are physical touch isn't your thing, right? It's not your first one. It might be something different. So you want to look at, how do you give, how does your wife give love? Does she do things for you around the house, cooking meals, or when she's happy, right? When she's, good word. Or does she sit down with you? Or is she walking next to you and grabbing your butt and putting her hand behind the small of your back and giving you hugs? These are all signs of physical touch, quality time, acts of service. Or is she always giving you gifts? She's always giving you gifts. Every time she goes out shopping, she brings you home something. Then gifts is probably her language. If she's not, chances are it's not her language, guys. And you're getting fleeced.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say as well, a good way is to determine it in yourself or in the other person. What do you feel for yourself? Is what do you feel is missing? So some people, for touch, it's like you don't feel right if I know for me, touch is my love language, or one, words and
words of affirmation.
Words of affirmation. Yeah. So at my uncle's funeral last summer, it was obviously, we were in the COVID era, and it was all really strange about shaking hands. And it was really weird for me, because not to be able to shake hands with people was like, what's going on here? It just felt so awkward, so strange not to be able to do it. So yeah, it's what do you miss out? What if you couldn't say it, or if you couldn't touch, or if you can't spend time with someone, is that really a problem? I know for my brother, his is quality time, because he wants to go off and do things together, but he's not really one for having big conversations. We joke about it. One of our friends, he phoned him up and he said, my friend likes to talk, and he's a bit like a girl, he just talks about anything for hours. And my brother says, is this conversation going anywhere, or what's that? I think and it's just, if you asked him to go out for a drink or go somewhere, he would be there, So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting to work out where people are at, not just your intimate partners, but friends, family, everyone in your life.
Yeah. I actually did a seminar on this for the love languages at work. Right now, there's a book on it, but I use it. You can use this, guys, in the workplace, right? So if I know Franco's love language is words of affirmation or physical touch, I think it's words of affirmation. But if I know that, then I know I can fill Franco up by talking to him, telling him how great he is and how great he's doing. And that makes it's not manipulative. It's really just giving somebody what they want, what they need. Right. Again, if it's physical touch, I see Franco, I give him a big hug, right? It's going to be a little while, but maybe here in a month or so at the next Alpha Reset, I'll be able to do that. As things open up, but you can use this at work too. And like I said, use it with your kids and watch and observe. That's really where this comes in, is watch and observe and see how people are acting. Again, guys, if you've been on the outs with your wife for a while and she's telling you it's gifts, but she's not giving you gifts, it's not her love language, right? It's very rare, very rare. And I know everybody's going to think that they're the exception to the rule, but it's very rare that somebody doesn't give the way they receive, right? Just like if you go to a barbecue, the person who always says, oh, we got to bring a bottle of wine or 6-pack of beer, they're expecting you to do that when you go to their barbecue, right? That's, to them, that's just what you do. It's the same thing with the love languages. Quality time is just what you do, for someone you care about. That's my wife's thing. Well, if you love me, you'll just want to spend all your time with me, right? For me, it's like, well, if you love me, you'll do things around the house and get them done, because can't you see this list of stuff? So that's what you want to look at, guys. But the first things first, the first thing you want to do here, as Franco said a couple of times, is start with a solid foundation, right? If you just try to use the 5 love languages in your relationship without a solid foundation, if the scales are tipped towards the negative experiences and emotions, which most relationships are, quite frankly, it's not going to work. So first thing you need to do is clear the slate, right? Get it back to neutral. Use the clean slate method, right? Get that back to neutral. The second thing is you got to get those scales back to the positive, right? And away from the negative. And you do that really with coming in there and, using the hidden motives technique. That's the best thing I've ever seen to do it, and going through there. And then we solidify it with, the 5 love languages, but also the live like a king system. That's where you start adding things on. Just like building a house, you got to build the foundation first. You don't start picking out the shutters and the curtains before you've, broken ground. You just don't do that. And the love languages, to me, in my experience, using the house analogy, is the chimney or the curtains. It's an accessory that goes on there. And it's a great one. It's one you want, but it's not something that's going to actually give you the stability of a home, the warmth of a home in there. You got to go with the triadic connection first.
I love that analogy. I think it's very relevant because a lot of guys that come to us are thinking, well, is she going to do her bit? Is she going to reciprocate? And what I like about the house analogy is that, you think about it, all the things you mentioned there, the foundations, it's usually the man's job, all of the things that put the house solidly in place is the man's job. I'm not, some people might get upset with this, but I'm going to say it anyway. So whereas the curtains traditionally would be the woman's job, or certainly that's when they would get involved, and but they're not going to get it. They're not going to be able to get involved and participate unless the house is in place in the first place. So that's your job as a man, to clean the slate if it needs cleaning, to have the foundation of connection, and then the leadership of the live like a king system.
Yeah, and it's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Well, and you know this. I mean, you and I have been, obviously, and everybody listening to this, you've dated before, guys, is when you better yourself and the relationship when you were dating didn't work, your stock goes up, as I always talk about it. I always thought about this in college. Your stock continues to rise the more you invest in yourself. You become more investable. Not only is your wife going to want to be invested in a stock that goes up like we all do, but so do other women, right? If it didn't work out, worst case, what if my wife doesn't reciprocate? Worst case scenario, you're a better man. Worst case scenario. That's not a bad worst case scenario to go with. It just isn't.
Well, I mean, look at the gifts thing, this is what I mean about it's only one dimension, is what would a woman prefer to have? Would she prefer to have one gift, whether it's a car or I don't know, flowers or something material, or would she prefer to have an amazing man, a really high value man whose stock is on the rise? If you look at hypergamy, that's what she wants. I mean, if you read, these romance novels, 50 Shades of Grey, whatever, like selling hundreds of millions of books every year. So what does she really want? She wants a man who's improving.
Yep.
She wants a great man. That's the best gift she could ever have, And yet we have guys coming to us and they say, I don't get it. I take her on holiday. I've just bought her a brand new car. I bought her this, I bought her that. And then when it comes to investing in himself, he's like, oh, I don't know about this. I'm not sure about it. It's like, got a chance to give her the best gift you could, you becoming the best man you could be the best gift you've ever had.
Oh, it definitely is. I mean, and the reason, we're going off on a little tangent here, but the reason the guys do that, and guys, I get it because I did it too, is fear. What happens because it's not the money, that's not what it is. You get divorced, you're going to lose 50% of what your net worth is, plus the time, the heartache, and everything else that goes around with that. So it's not the money. It's not the time, because you can just prioritize things, right? It's 8 weeks, right? For the activation method. I'm just talking about that as an example, but do something. It doesn't have to be the activation method with the powerful man, but do something. You and I love it because we've done it. We know it works, and it works for every guy that goes through the program. And the one thing every single man that graduates the activation method says when we ask them, what would you say? The question we ask these guys is, what would you say to your former self? Every single guy says the same thing. I wish I would have done it sooner. Right?
Absolutely.
If you could go back a year in time and change things, they don't say, I would change the way I acted in my marriage. I would do this differently. They say, I would have done the activation method or do the activation method earlier. right? Because that changes everything. So that's where it gets interesting. When we look at the 5 love languages, these are things that we talk to the guys about in depth when they go on. We have a one-year mastermind group called the Brotherhood, which you've graduated from, and also the Inner Circle. Then we go into different ways you can do this, right? But guys, I'm going to say this one more time. I know I've said it 3 times at least, but we hear it so much that guys are like, my wife's is gifts, right? And we just had a guy that we had to pull aside and have a private conversation with because we believe he was getting taken advantage of. And we just wanted to say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what we think is happening. And it proved out to be true. And he was getting fleeced for everything from this woman. And it was really horrible. If your wife, if it's really gifts, buy her a coffee and bring it home. And if she gets ecstatic about you bringing her a coffee, you can start looking at little things. Go pick her a flower and give it to her. If she gets ecstatic about that, okay, great. But if she discounts the small things, the thoughtful little small things that you get for her, and she's not getting them for you, that's the key. If she's not doing it for you, it's not gifts, guys. You're getting hosed, right? She's just, and I don't blame her at all, by the way.
She's just making up for a lack of connection or whatever's missing in the relationship anyway. So,
yeah, it's her version of sedation, just like guys drink or do drugs or porn. Yeah. She's just getting out of it. Anyway, we're off on a tangent. Franco, as always, I love having you on. Question you brought to the table is always a great one, and I appreciate it. Love to have you back here soon with the guys coming back in.
Let's do it again soon. Cheers, Doug.
We will. So, gentlemen, that's a wrap for us here at The Powerful Man Show. As always, go over to thepowerfulman.com/bonus, where you can get a new bonus each and every month. That's thepowerfulman.com/bonus. Until then, we'll see you next time. As always, take action and have a great week.